Happy 4th of July, folks. I'm Mike Murtis, Unleaded Logic, and welcome to another episode of Gamer Logic. Today we're covering what I got right behind me here, and that is Shadowrun for the SNES. Now, you've probably heard of Shadowrun before, but maybe not exactly in this version right here. Shadowrun started out as a pen and paper RPG, kind of similar to Dungeons & Dragons and Vampire the Masquerade, and kind of just sat behind in terms of popularity between those two that I mentioned. That's how Shadowrun got its start, its whole universe and everything. Most recently, Shadowrun, about maybe a year and a half ago, maybe further than that, Shadowrun got released on the Xbox 360, which I was really pumped up for, thinking that it was going to kind of follow in the same veins as this. However, it didn't. It was actually a multiplayer first-person shooter game based in the Shadowrun universe, so it wasn't what I was expecting at all. I beta tested it. It's a decent game, but because it wasn't what I was expecting, it was kind of a disappointment for me. But the other way Shadowrun was released was for the 16-bit systems during the console wars. And there was Shadowrun here for the Genesis, which is kind of probably hard to see on the label here because it is a dark label. That was the Genesis version, and of course there was the Super Nintendo version. Now, there's a lot of differences between the Genesis version and the Super NES version. One thing is the storyline is completely different. It's in the same universe, same location, but completely different. Also, Shadowrun on the SNES runs on a isometric view, and the Genesis version runs on the top-down overview. Now, there's some people who love the Genesis version and hate the SNES version, and vice versa. I never really got into the Genesis version, but I think that's because when I was a kid, I was a Super Nintendo fanboy. So trying to get into the Genesis version even later, I just can't do it. I mean, it's not a terrible game, I just can't get into it. But not to go any more into the Genesis version, let's talk about this game here. Now, the story of Shadowrun in general is that it's the future, corporations have taken over the world, government's kind of been overthrown, and it's just these corporations that pretty much own a state or city. And the game takes place in Seattle, Washington. And you play a Shadowrunner, which is a kind of like a hitman, basically. A hitman mercenary that doesn't just do combat out on the street and, you know, kill people and assassinate people and do random jobs for corporations. But they also jack into cyberspace, or what's actually known as the Matrix. And in the Matrix, they pull data, they hack into systems and pull stuff. So the best way to describe it would be Dungeons & Dragons, because, you know, orcs and elves and other things are in this game, and magic. It would be a cross between Dungeons & Dragons and the Matrix, the movies, the whole Matrix mythos. It's like if someone took those and smashed them together, that's what you would get with Shadowrun. And this game came out in like 93, 94, so this was far ahead of its time. The whole universe was for Shadowrun. But you play as Jake, and Jake was running a mission for a corporation, and he gets the data, and he's on his way back to his house, his apartment, and he's gunned down. Someone set a hit squad to take him out. And as far as you know, from what you can tell, you die right at the beginning of the game. And this mysterious fox runs up to you and casts some magic on you and kind of revives you. And you actually start the game in a morgue. These two guys are bringing you in. They put you in the slab of the morgue drawer, basically, and you scare the living hell out of them because you pop out of this drawer and you can't really remember who you are because your brain's been fried. When you were attacked, you lost all memory of who you were, and you can't pull that data because your data jack in your head is damaged. That's how they plug in Shadowrun. The actual interface to hack into the Matrix is plugged right into the head on the side. Kind of like the Matrix movies. So you got to wonder how much the creators of the Matrix maybe pulled from this game. But anyways, your basic mission is to figure out who you are, figure out why you were gunned down, and figure out what kind of important data is in your head. And on your way, you'll meet many people, go to many different locations in Seattle, and accomplish a ton of stuff on your quest for vengeance and a quest to figure out just why you were gunned down. Gameplay is pretty cool. Like I mentioned, it's played from an isometric view, so you see stuff from the side, and the graphics are detailed enough to the point where you can move around things. But the only minor complaint I have is stuff is really small, so you can easily miss certain items. So you really need to pay attention to your surroundings, and you can activate kind of like a mouse cursor. You can point around the area, so you'll see stuff laying around, and some of that stuff is important to actually progress in the game, so you got to be careful. So that's really my only minor complaint about that in the graphics department. Storyline wise, as I just covered with you, the game has a vast story, and as you move through the game, you can talk to hundreds of people, and you pick up keywords as you talk to them. So you talk to them, you'll get your first window of communication, and then you can hit talk again and they may say a certain keyword. Well, then you can ask that character that certain keyword and see if you can get more keywords and more information off of that. So the dialogue tree for all these characters really expands after a while. Another cool feature about this game is, for the most part, you're by yourself, but you can actually hire other Shadowrunners to help you on your missions when you're trying to take a big group of enemies down. And the Shadowrunners range from, magic shamans, mages, orcs with huge machine guns, elves and stuff that do hacking, and all, a big variety of characters that you can actually hire on. Combat is all done real time. It's done on the same screen that you're walking around on, so there's no jump to combat. Enemies will appear on screen, and then you hit the button to activate your gun, and you point the cursor and you just start shooting away. So combat is pretty easy. Building up your experience is also an interesting way too, because instead of building experience points, you build karma points, and you can apply that to your charisma, your computer skills, your energy skills, and you can keep building up your character as you go. Now, later on, you'll also get magic, and you'll learn how to cast spells, and you'll also get your data jack working again, and then you can actually start hacking into the matrix and get money and get more information on who and why you were gunned down and what this mission was that you're accomplishing. One of the coolest things in this game is this one instance where Jake just gets out of these car yards, which is almost like a prison for people who are trying to hide. Once you get in, you can't get out. And Jake just gets out, and you go to the street doctor to get your data jack fixed, because he says he can fix it. He tells you to hop up on the table. You hop up on there, and he's working, and all of a sudden he says, "Oops." And Jake's just like, "What do you mean, oops?" Well, this data was so guarded that they put a bomb in your head. So now you have this bomb that is ticking in your head, and if you don't figure out who you can talk to get this bomb taken off, your whole head's going to explode, and basically the game's over. So you have to make this mad dash from this doctor all the way to another part of Seattle, and then talk to this other doctor who will fix it, and it's like $5,000 to fix it. So that is probably one of the most intense moments in the game, because if you don't know where to go, you're screwed. Your head's going to pop off. But that's probably one of the most exciting moments in the game. But the music's great in this game, the combat's great in this game, and overall the story's great. And it's a real shame, because at the end of the game they actually said that there'll be a Shadowrun 2. And unfortunately, I don't think the popularity was ever there for a sequel to get released, at least in this kind of environment. The only other game that was somewhat close to it again was the Genesis version, and it just didn't have the depth of the SNES version, in my opinion. Everything was different about it. It just didn't have the environments there like the other stuff. It really seemed thrown together to me. I know Genesis people are going to be angry because I said that, but that's just my opinion. But overall, out of a probably a 10-star ranking, I'd probably give this a 9.5, with my only minor gripe again being the small graphics when it comes to finding stuff. But if you have a Super Nintendo and you've never tried this game before, I definitely recommend hunting it down. The prices do vary on it. Otherwise, emulation's also a pretty good bet too. I'm Unleaded Logic. This was another episode of Gamer Logic. We'll be back soon. Have a happy and safe 4th of July, folks. Take it easy.